introduction, but I am going to take the opportunity to introduce him anyway because almost 10 years ago, I had the pleasure of introducing Chris in Austin. You might remember the SDXE, the Software Defined Enterprise Conference and Expo. Early days, I was running the first ever and world's largest OpenStack community, and at the time, about 45% of OpenStack users were starting to integrate Kubernetes. And remember, this is 2017, so maybe Kubernetes was 3. So remember how easy it was back in those days? But the community had a lot of questions. So I developed a talk. I was taking it all over the world. And I called up Dan Kahn, who was the executive director of the CNCF at the time. And I said, hey, I'm coming to Austin with this talk about Kubernetes. And, will you be on stage with me? And he's like, no, but I got this guy in Austin. And I was like, who? And, relatively unpronounceable name at the time. We didn't know him as well. And I'm like, I think I just met that guy. He's like the executive director of the OCI, right? Like, I think I just saw him talk at Container World. Like, yeah, he's all right. Okay, this could work. So I invite Chris on stage to ask him, like, all the super hard questions. And these are the questions that we were getting in the early days. How enterprise grade is Kubernetes today? Remember, 2017, in the summer. What support and services are in place today to help enterprise adoption? Keyword enterprise. Are containers the end of VMs as we know them? Remember that question? That was a fun one, and we were getting that a lot. But these are the questions that the community has been asking for the last 10 years, and I think we've come a long way, right? And as a fellow cloud native community architect who shares the same passion for the open cloud, I can honestly say also one of my favorite things about Chris is how he shows up for the community. And I think that you are so lucky in the Austin area to have one of the cloud native OGs in your own backyard. And case in point, the shirt that I'm wearing right now, also 2017 KubeCon in Austin. And Chris was the one that was like, you really should come out to this. I mean, like, bring your, the Bay Area user group, bring all the knowledge back, but like, you should come to this. And he was super, super encouraging of me to join the CNCF ambassador team, and he shows up for community. I think we can say this person is very, not single-handedly, but played a huge role in the innovation of the open cloud and of cloud native, and not just the original inception of cloud native, but like the innovative part of it. So Chris is going to come up here and tell us about the last 10 years and what we've got going on going forward with cloud native and the open cloud. Chris Aniszczyk, don't bother trying to spell it, just learn how to pronounce it. Come on up, Chris.
So that was a very kind introduction, Lisa. It's been a huge kind of honor helping build out the cloud native community the last 10 years. It's been kind of a 10-year journey for me since the beginning, and kind of seeing how things have changed in the last decade has been fun, fun to watch. And it's kind of been fun to see the even community here in Austin grow, over that time. So today I plan to talk a little bit about how do we get here in the last kind of 10 years, where do we kind of come from, and then kind of where the CNCF community is going in the next decade. And just by the amount of sponsors here, it kind of may give you an idea of kind of the diversity of our ecosystem, right? It's not just running infrastructure, it's securing it, observing it. So it's kind of fun to kind of see the diversity here. But to kind of be a little bit more sentimental and maybe kind of laugh about what we do is I always try to explain hey, what do you actually do all day, right? And the job sometimes is not glorious, but a lot of times we're sitting there managing large environments, trying to keep them alive, and the day-to-day job could be not as glamorous as you can. I guess not fully accurate with the Google search anymore. A lot of people are using the AI tools, but overall it's kind of just a fun little ecosystem that we've built over the years, and it's always good to start out with a lighthearted meme. But to kind of give you some history, so
bring the mic closer.
Cool. I'll just go this way. Hey, awesome. Mic'd up, but we'll go this way. So, I've been involved in infrastructure and open source infrastructure for a long time. Before I came to the Kubernetes and CNCF community, I spent time working on a project called Mesos. And if you kind of look at the history, Google Trends isn't always perfect, but if you kind of look at this, our industry about 10 years ago was very, very, very different. Kubernetes just kind of came out. CNCF didn't really exist at the time. We had some other cool open source infrastructure projects. I'm sure some of you obviously remember OpenStack. There was CloudStack, which is kind of like a Citrix replacement, and then obviously, Mesos, which was a pretty solid technology, especially innovative, for its time. And you kind of look at this data and you're like, all right, obviously Mesos, CloudStack doing pretty well. Kubernetes just kind of, came along and kind of surprised some folks over time. But if you kind of expand to where we are today, if you kind of look at this, it's amazing how what at the time could be like a very competitive landscape completely changes very, very fast in a short amount of time. So, the kind of constant need to up-level skills, learn new things and stuff like that, I think is important to kind of what we're doing. But this is just shows you how crazy this is over time. And some of us who have been in this space have kind of seen the evolution of CNCF and Kubernetes over those years, and especially with all the other kind of crazy projects we have. So just it's to me, it's a little bit sentimental looking at this. Yeah, it's been a crazy 10 years of fun in some ways. So this year we're celebrating 10 years of CNCF. It's always fun to talk a little bit about the history of kind of where things come from because it kind of shows you kind of some of the initial inspiration. If you kind of look at the organization, it was announced in July 2015 first. It was a kind of small announcement that, hey, Kubernetes is, we're building a foundation for Kubernetes. Here are like the 20 companies or so involved. It was announced at OSCON, which doesn't exist anymore. It was kind of a premier open source conference for its days. And if you kind of look at these companies, AT&T, Box, Cisco, Cloud Foundry, CoreOS, Cycle, Docker, eBay, Goldman Sachs, Google, Huawei, IBM, Intel, Joyent, Kismatic, Mesosphere, Red Hat, Switch, Twitter, Univa, VMware, Weaveworks, a lot of those don't exist anymore. They're startups that kind of failed. You actually didn't have Amazon or Microsoft involved at all. So it was kind of a small set of maybe pioneers that really helped galvanize, this movement. Very, very fascinating to kind of me, at least from my perspective, of the original folks involved. CNCF started, we kind of did our boring things, held our first board meeting at New York Times in December 2015. And then, once we got our shit together and had our project processes figured out, we voted in Kubernetes as our first project. So very, very simple, humble, beginnings for the organization. And if you look at the organization today, we're here in Austin with, a sold out crowd, which is awesome. But, we've grown to over, basically it's over 208,000 contributors now that have, supported over 220 projects now in CNCF. We have contributors from almost every major country and organization. We have over 9,000 organizations that contribute to CNCF projects. So truly incredible. Kubernetes is now really the second highest velocity project behind the Linux kernel itself, if you kind of look at how contributions come to the project. So truly incredible. Linux is still used everywhere for sure. It's 33, 34 years old, but Kubernetes only in 10 years has kind of come up and grown so fast to really match the velocity and speed of Linux. So quite a crazy story. So let's talk a little bit about more of the history and how we got here and kind of what the future may look like based on the lessons that we've learned from the past. So, before CNCF and Kubernetes came around, for us, I see some of you here have been working in the industry for a while. And if you think about it, about 30, 40 years ago, we were basically writing applications that were targeted for single mainframe systems. Usually you had a single vendor that you worked with, right? It was a very kind of classic, old school way of building, and it worked well. Like mainframes still popular these days, but that was kind of how we mostly developed, software, single vendor closed ecosystems. What happened over time, we had some innovations. The smart folks at VMware figured out how to basically, hey, let's go run multiple, operating systems on the same machine and reuse some of that hardware. Amazon pioneered kind of renting compute infrastructure as service. Then we had some open source variants of this. OpenStack and Cloud Foundry both pioneered open source PaaS and infrastructure as a service. Docker revolutionized the world of containers. And then CNCF came around in 2015. And if you kind of just look at this arc, all I will really want to show and tell you about this kind of arc of history is we went from very single vendor, single purpose type systems to multi-vendor, openly governed kind of communities, right? A lot of the technology now is you have choice. You have up-teen observability vendors to choose from, right? And a lot of them are based in using OpenTelemetry. You have a lot of people to support you on your Kubernetes security journey. So this whole march of moving from single monolithic systems to decomposed services with a lot of open supported communities is kind of what has happened over the last really 30 years, and I think will for sure continue to happen in the cloud native world. So I'll give you a quick, I've mentioned this before, I love timeline diagrams, I'm a huge fan, but we really talked about the founding of CNCF. 2016, I was dying, kind of being the only person, running CNCF and OCI. As Lisa referred to, we hired the late Dan Kahn to help me out to join as executive director. And more importantly, we decided to really expand CNCF to be more than just Kubernetes, which I think is incredibly important. So Prometheus was added. I'm sure there's a lot of Prometheus users that have played with Prometheus in the room, but arguably Prometheus is a lot easier to use than Kubernetes itself. In my ways to get started, but this was important, but it did really help us expand the scope of the organization to be more than just running compute and infrastructure. What do you need to do once you kind of get Kubernetes up and going? You need to figure out how to observe the system, how do you observe the services, how do you secure them, all these kind of fun things. So it was kind of a fun expansion. 2017 was one of my favorite years. There was a lot of fun outside of the KubeCons that we're starting to put together. We kind of had a coalescing of container runtimes and container image formats. Way back in the day, if you were involved in the community, there was actually multiple container formats, right? There was different ways to package applications. It was insane. You had to basically repackage potentially applications in a different way to run in a different container runtime. That sucks. That will limit adoption, right? So we all came together and decided to standardize these things in 2017. We also had the Docker engine contributed to CNCF, which is now Containerd. That is probably the most dominant container runtime out there that basically runs most of the workloads out there. And we also in CNCF, as I mentioned in the founding, other big hyperscalers are missing. So Amazon, Microsoft, and Oracle just both joined that year in 2017. And that really, to me, was the inflection point when kind of CNCF grew significantly. We have a lot of different technology in CNCF. This kind of march to open options. Serverless is still a very popular way to run certain types of workloads. In the 2018, we started to see open source variants of these things. Knative came around and was open sourced. We had a cloud events project, which is kind of a serverless eventing technology, joined CNCF, and Amazon even open source Firecracker, which was kind of their micro VM to run serverless workloads. So this kind of march towards open source technologies continued, this time in the serverless context, and of course these technologies were part of and contributed to CNCF. So CNCF continued to kind of expand its scope outside of both just observing and building out infrastructure to run workloads. We had a big year in 2019 where we basically announced the OpenTelemetry project. Funny enough, just like there was multiple ways to run containers, how to package containers into images, there was multiple standards, to figure out how to observe workloads, right? We had open tracing for mostly traces, open census handled metrics and logs. There's other stuff out there, and we together decided, hey, as a community, what are we good at CNCF? We're good at bringing people together to work on problems across different companies that enable us to kind of build an ecosystem and kind of benefit everyone. And hence, OpenTelemetry was born. It is now the second most active and popular project in terms of velocity in CNCF, right behind Kubernetes. And if you're aware, almost every major observability vendor out there, both large and startups, support OpenTelemetry as a standard. So super, super cool and fun year, and definitely an underrated project in CNCF. 2021, we had a lot more maturity. There's a technology called eBPF. I'm an old kernel person, so fun technology that has existed for quite a while, so you don't have to go, reconfigure your kernel, reboot it, and add modules. This allows you to kind of do things on the fly. So eBPF became a lot more popular in 2021, and continues, basically serves as a basis to help redo how security and observability work in a Kubernetes, in a cloud native world. 2023, this is when kind of I would say the beginning of the AI infrastructure craze started to happen in CNCF. We accepted Kubeflow as a project. Kubernetes started to work on improved primitives. I think that's the next slide that really highlights that. If you're familiar with DRA in Kubernetes, it basically enables you to use GPUs a little bit more efficiently. We've had a lot of AI work that's happening in CNCF. We had a working group release the white paper. We're starting to accept more projects. So 2014 in CNCF was really about AI workload enablement. How do we essentially improve the technologies we have in CNCF to support AI and GPU-based workloads? Kubernetes was not designed for that. Originally, even technologies like OpenTelemetry, not designed to do that type of work, right? And this whole evolution is happening right now in CNCF2 about supporting this kind of new, boom and hype cycle we are in terms of got to figure out how to, GPU and AI workloads are not too different from really managing container workloads. So that's what's happening. All right. What's actually next? A lot of people, I spent a lot of my time on the road talking to organizations, figuring out what they're doing, where they're planning, and kind of I have my own kind of ideas where CNCF and cloud native is going next. To not like insert a joke here, but there's kind of this meme. Like I love our community in some way because we poke fun at ourselves. Everyone's like, "Oh, this landscape is awful," right? There's too many options, but hey, joke's on you. That's the reality of the world, right? We built an ecosystem that gives you a lot of choice and options out there. There's just not one way to do things. But so CNCF will continue to expand for sure. But one thing that kind of made me laugh recently, there was an article a couple of weeks, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, and I don't know, I'm assuming most of you are in the tech industry here or maybe serve in some type of engineering function. And I sometimes want to die inside every time I hear like, everything's just going to be written by AI, right? You have the CTO of Microsoft saying in 2030, 95% of code is going to be written by AI. I don't believe that. Maybe it's probably half that, but there's a lot of change happening, right? There's going to be a lot of change that's going to happen in the next 10 years, and some of these trends are indicative of where CNCF will go. But the kind of way I think about this is, right now there's about 10 million or so cloud native developers out there, right? That work on cloud native technology. How are we going to onboard the next 10 million or 20 million or 30 million, right? Are they going to be people? Are they going to be AI agents that develop shit? Who knows, right? Well, you kind of look at the past. Like I'm a big fan of looking at the past to learn where the future may go. And for some of us who've been in the room for a while, like maybe us grew up on, Microsoft systems or Linux systems. And if you remember back in the day, you had DOS, you had a command line interface, right? That's how you interface with systems. In my opinion, very user-friendly. Great system, I can understand it. But you're not gonna get the whole world to go use this system, right? And so what happened in 98, Windows kind of came around. There was a new interface to interface with the existing underlying system. And that brought in whole next, set of growth, right? And I think this is essentially what's required, I think, in CNCF and Kubernetes to really unlock that next wave of users. And if I kind of look at it today, a lot of folks are, traditional administrators and engineers that dabble with Kubernetes. It's not easy to get how do you install and how do you get started with Kubernetes these days? Apt-get install it, you run mini, it's not easy. If you use a cloud-based service, we could do a lot better. And I'll tell you a little bit of what we're gonna do. So we've done studies, research, there's about 10 million cloud native developers out there. But I'll talk about what's kind of happening right now in the future. Oh, my video is not working, joy. Or maybe I have to go click and play it. But so, we all joke about Linux on the desktop, but I think what's gonna happen in 2025 is there's been a lot of effort to make it easier for people to get started in Kubernetes that is just getting going. So there's a project in CNCF that's called Headlamp, which was originally contributed by, it was a startup that was acquired by Microsoft. But you kind of think about this as, why did Docker get a lot, very popular? Well, Docker desktop is actually not a bad way to kind of get started, right? Especially if you're used to that type of interface. So the Headlamp project is all about bringing that desktop style experience to Kubernetes. So when you go to the Kubernetes website in the future, hopefully you're going to be able to go download a executable that works on Windows, Mac, wherever, and you kind of have a local console, that you could use. That's not just a command line prompt. You're going to have a full interface that shows you your services running and other, sadly it's not playing to, oh, maybe it is. But basically, if you ever use like vSphere or VMware, like basically you're going to have a Docker desktop, you're going to have a more desktop type of experience. And in my opinion, this type of thing is going to help unlock a lot more users, people that may have been familiar with that desktop experience through a previous life as an IT administrator or something else. It's just going to make Kubernetes a lot easier for people to play with and use. And this work is actively happening right now. So if you're interested in this type of thing, I highly recommend checking out the new HeadLab project that I contributed to Kubernetes. Oh God, now it's locked. The other thing that's continuing is like can't escape the AI hype train and then so on. So Kubernetes continues to make improvements. We have some projects that are being contributed to improve how scheduling is done in Kubernetes to kind of support GPU-based workloads. There's a concept of gang scheduling that is popular in the AI world. There's also like how do you manage Kubernetes with 10,000 plus clusters. So a lot of cool stuff is happening in Kubernetes in the latest Kubernetes release and future releases regarding this topic. The other thing that is going to happen is AI models are getting popular. They're being packaged in a variety of different ways. Just the way we package containers and build our application containers, same thing's going to happen with models. And people are going to package models and containers. They're going to reuse cloud native registries and container registries out there. There's a lot of work right now happening at CNCF to basically reuse all the amazing tools we built to do scanning, compliance and so on. Like, why would you build a whole new set of registries for that specific purpose for AI models? What's going to happen is they're all going to go merge and essentially, use our existing systems. And there's going to be a lot of improvements that are going to be made to do this. And there's some cool CNCF projects out there that are doing this. The other thing that's happening is a lot of the existing tools we built, whether it's like Argo for workflow, OTel to help observability, agents are becoming a thing. And so you're going to have to be able to observe them. How do you run these things at scale? They fail. So we have a lot of different projects and more projects coming to CNCF to do this. You're actually going to hear from the talented Lynn Sun later today. She has got a talk that talks a little bit about one of our new sandbox projects called K-Agents. So I would definitely pay attention to this space. It's like I don't view agents inherently different than a microservice that you need to manage in sandbox. It's just a little bit different. So, all right. Final thing before I kind of open it up for joining the community is I spend a lot of my time dealing with companies, boring stuff, regulation, security. So open source now is just used everywhere. Companies have dependencies on it. Governments have dependencies on it. There's a lot more laws and regulations being passed. A lot of the stuff in CNCF, people are working behind the scenes to ensure that there are like software bill of materials generated. The stuff meets global compliance things. So this is kind of the year where I think where things will continue to kind of grow up to meet a lot of these worldwide regulations that are being passed all over the bit. So to kind of wrap things up, given that I'm running out of time, is really the next decade of CNCF and cloud native is we're going to improve developer experience. We're going to continue to kind of expand our landscape overall. The ecosystem is going to continue to move from these single vendor technologies to open source multi-vendor ecosystems. And honestly, I think, we're going to get to a position where, both the AI worlds and cloud native worlds are going to come together and learn from the best of each other because, look, AI workloads are no different than other types of workloads. They still need to be orchestrated, secured, and managed. So to kind of do the final call to action here is, look, events like this bring people together. CNCF is a massive open source community. There are tons of ways to get involved. If you're a developer, great. Contribute code, join a project. If you're not a developer, there are many non-code ways to contribute. Host an event like this, a meetup, help with a translation. CNCF is very open to all types of contributors. You just don't have to be a developer to get involved in our community. Lots of events. We do so many things. Here's a QR code out there for events. I spent a good chunk of my time on the road. We now have 5 large KubeCons. Next month, I'll be in China and Japan doing our first KubeCon there. And of course, in North America, we're in Atlanta later this year. And of course, we're in India. So please check these out. If you have teams out there, more QR codes for folks to join. We have so many different ways to get involved in our community. And If your company is using CNCF technology, if you're an end user doing some cool things, I'd love to talk to you while you're here today. One way that we do events like this is through the support of our members. And if you're interested in doing more things like this, join the CNCF, support us so we can kind of continue to grow and cultivate the cloud native community. So find me here, I'll be here all day. And then to end it with a meme, just like I started with it, definitely want to thank everyone here for joining and learning and supporting our community. So thank you, and I'm getting rushed off stage because I'm a little bit late. All right, thanks all, and good to see all y'all.